All right, welcome to the Church Dropout podcast. My name is Alan. I am the host. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Church Dropout is a podcast. We talk about issues, topics, and teachings related to faith, life, and culture in ways that are sometimes funny, sometimes serious, but always insightful. I am joined by my lovely wife.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, babe.
If you have not, I'm good. I was about to roll on.
I'm sorry.
Good. Yeah, hold on. You okay?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
You're so stupid.
If you have not already, please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast at. We'd appreciate it. And please let somebody else know about the podcast. So, every now and again, you come across something that is able to articulate what you feel. What you feel, because you can't often put words to it.
Right.
Every now and again, you come across something like, man, that's it. Like that's what I'm feeling. Yeah. And I want to share a quick video and then talk a little bit about it from an individual named John Mark Comer. He was a pastor out in the Seattle, Portland area, Portland, Oregon area. And he no longer pastors. He's moved out of the church. And he was being interviewed, and he talked about his experience with church and Sunday mornings. Okay, and he's talking about his journey now and how he feels about the church and Sunday morning. And I think it's spot on for me, and I think it's spot on for a lot of people. Yeah. Right. One of the things that I know is just true is like, and I've had these conversations and I felt it myself. It's like, something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, or something's wrong. It's not like wrong in a moral sense. Like, it's not like there's something in church that's morally wrong. It just feels like there's something wrong. Like, there's something missing here. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you often just don't have the words to express it. People can't understand it, but you just know, like, man, there has to be something greater. There has to be something else, right? And I think he encapsulates that well. So we'll listen to the clip. I have not read. I've read some of his books, but I have not read his latest book that I think one of his latest books that I think lines this out, and that's intentional because right now I'm trying to think through my own thoughts, and I don't want somebody else's thoughts. Right. But I feel the same exact way. You know what I mean? And I've said it in different ways, but a lot of people are walking away from the American church in search of Jesus. Okay. They're not walking away from the American church because they don't love Christ, because they hate religion, because they're mad, you know what I mean? At, the church. Obviously some are hurt, but a lot of people are walking away in search of Jesus. They're trying to find real spirituality. And unfortunately, what we do in the church is just not working. It's just not working. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we'll listen to what he has to say, and then we'll kind of chop it up. All right.
Part of my underwhelm with Sunday services is just that I'm, not that far down the spiritual path, but I'm not 25 anymore. And sitting through a sermon series on whatever is not as life-changing for me at this point in my journey as it was at that point in my journey. I'm a little bit less emotion-driven now at this point. The problems I'm facing in my, sin that's in my body are much deeper and are not solved by information and inspiration for the most part. I'm way too messed up for that. And it's a much, much deeper stuff that Jesus is working on in me now. And then I think part of it, and this is embarrassing, but there is just the American consumer mentality that is the air we breathe. It's like breathing secondhand smoke. I can't help but imbibe the consumerism of our culture. And in a TED Talk, internet-based podcast world, unless if your local preacher is John Tyson or, a couple of years, not that long ago, Tim Keller, it's pretty hard to not be a little bit.
All right. So that is the clip.
Mm-hmm.
A lot,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot said.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
And I'm not sure if they heard the last part. He said not feel a little bit bored.
Bored. Yes.
Like, that really kind of hit home, because sometimes I will be sitting there in church services, any service. And sometimes I do find myself either like drifting off or thinking about, what we're going to eat for lunch after we leave, or, I'm just being
Yeah.
real.
Every time you
Everything's
drift off, you're
about
thinking
food.
about food.
Yes. And
That is Lisa.
so but I do find myself getting bored. I try to snap out of it and, but it's just like, I think it does have a lot to do with, maturity and things like that, because it's like, I can go home and, read my word, break it down and, what I mean, and get fed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so sometimes, if I feel bored, I'm just like, okay, why am I here? You know what I mean? So, or I could be sitting, at home with family, listening to this same, word, that's being preached,
Yeah.
and, I don't know. I just, when he said that kind of hit home, just the
Absolutely.
boredness that did kind of hit home. And it's not like I'm intentionally like bored, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to hear this, because that's not what's in my head at all.
Yeah.
That's not how I feel about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. It's, I remember when I was kind of walking through, like when this stuff really started to hit me, I didn't have a category to put it in. So I would, like, I thought it was just a mega church problem. So I can only identify it with the things that I was experiencing and seeing. So I was like, man, the church doesn't need to be big. Because I didn't have the category to kind of put what I was feeling in. So I only named it by the things that I was experiencing. But the deeper I went, the more I realized it has nothing to do with the environment of church. It has nothing to do with the size. It has nothing to do with any of that. What I'm feeling is more of a spiritual longing, more of a desire to connect with God deeper. You understand? And so when I hear you say that, and I hear him say that about being bored, I think a lot of times, it's like, I've heard this before. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I know there's no real excitement because it's the same stuff. And to be honest, I felt the same thing even in very in entertaining environments. Right. So it's not so much of just being bored of what's happening. It's more of being bored spiritually. It's kind of like, I don't know how else to put it, like a spiritual boredness where it's like, is this it? Is my existence just getting up on Sundays, going to this place, hearing someone talk about God? Like, is this it? It doesn't even matter if it's a charismatic thing, or is this it? People rolling around doing their thing, and I'm being facetious, but you know what I mean? Or exegetical preaching on the conservative side. Oh, he broke that passage down in the Greek, and is this it? There's this. It's like almost being bored, but it's really saying something about your spiritual longing, right? At least that's what it was for me. And so I hear what he's saying, like, I just don't, for me, I just don't find Sunday mornings appealing. It's not life-giving. I feel the same way he feels. It's just not life-giving to me. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with what Sunday mornings have become, right? It's become an emotional experience.
Yeah.
And by emotional, I just mean by how we respond versus are we intimately connecting with God?
Right.
It's become more about the things that we do, like in terms of, did we preach a certain way? Did we sing a certain song? Like, it becomes more about the things that are around the gospel versus the gospel itself. It's more about, pushing the machine or the program for it. Like, it's just become stale, right? And again, some people will interpret this as, well, we need more excitement. So we need to be more free, and the spirit that's not what I'm talking about, because that doesn't fill us as well.
Right.
In John 6, actually, I believe it's John 6 or John 5, one of the two. It's in the Bible, where Jesus rebukes the crowd for following him for miracles, right? He says, you're only following me because I gave you bread. You're only following me because I did this miraculous thing. You don't want me, you want what I got. Right. So it's not you don't find Jesus in the gifts, you know what I mean? And you don't find him in this religious, ordinary, step-by-step process. And so I get what he's saying, and he related it to age. He's like, I'm not 25 anymore, and I just don't need, I think what he was trying to say is that, at least how I'm hearing what he was trying to say is, when life starts lifing and you really need Jesus to show up, it's not this game anymore when you don't have real things to worry about.
Right.
And when your faith really matters, because of what you're experiencing, Sunday morning, it don't do. When you and I were going through what we were going through, Sunday morning wasn't going to fix that.
Nope.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When I was dealing with and continue to deal with just depression and different things of that sort, Sunday morning doesn't fix that. I need Jesus.
Yes.
I need Jesus. I don't need fluff. I don't need program.
Yeah.
I need intimacy.
Yeah.
And I think the church has lost its prophetic voice to where, again, I think we can do those things without the Spirit of God. It's a performance in spirituality instead of an engagement in spirituality. And again, this is hard to talk about. And over time, I think I'll get better language. But the reality is that it's not about freedom in the spirit. And it's not about right doctrine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not, those boxes are too small. You understand what I'm saying? Like, to fit God. And those things only suffice for a certain period of time before you have to connect with, before you have a real need to worship the true God. And I think a lot of people are there. A lot of people are like, man, I've been doing this for a while. I've been walking with God for a while. There's just something that's not right here. I feel like I'm missing him, or he's missing me. I don't feel like the church is doing anything. There's a lot going on, but I feel like nothing's being accomplished, right? Like it's almost like the American church today is a treadmill. You know what I mean? It's like you're running, but you're not going nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's just in the same spot. You're doing stuff. There's activity, but there's no growth, right? There's no life. And so, man, I feel it. So there's a couple things that he said, and then we'll be done here. He talked about the issues and the problems that he's having, the brokenness that he feels. Sunday morning just doesn't suffice for that. And this is interesting because he's been a pastor for a long time. He's been in the faith for a long time. And you would think, this is where I think a lot of us crash, is that we think that discipleship and walking with Jesus is progressing to better. That as we walk with him, we should be getting better. But that's why people crash, is because they look at their life 20 years down the road and they're like, I'm not better. In fact, I feel worse about who I am. Paul says in Romans 7, whether you believe it's pre-salvation or not, I believe he's talking as a saved man. But in Romans 7, he says, man, I struggle with sin. And he's talking about this struggle that's waging within him. I want to do right, but I can't do right. And this is older Paul, right? Like, this is Paul, saved Paul, right? Even in Galatians, I believe it's Galatians, it's in the Bible, right? I have, and let me say this too, because I just want to free somebody. I got, I have a hard time remembering certain things in scripture. I also have dyslexia and stuff like that. I used to beat myself up because I could not remember scripture, or I felt like there was something wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? And you need to release yourself from that. If that's you let that go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's not spirituality.
Yeah.
But anyway, side topic. But anyway, Paul is like, listen, he says, I'm the wretched of the wretched. I'm the worst sinner of you all, right? So the closer that he gets to Jesus, the more broken he realizes he is. In the same way, the closer we get to a mirror, the better we're able to see our blemishes. So why wouldn't it be the same with Jesus?
Right.
When we get closer to God, we should be seeing our brokenness better because we're getting closer to something that's holy and righteous, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the opposite. And people break because they're like, man, I'm not getting better. Why do I feel more sinful today than I did when I was even saved? Well, that's because that's a part of the journey.
Right.
And when you experience deep brokenness and suffering, then you realize that this is not, I can't play this anymore.
Right.
I can't play Christian. I was just telling one of my friends, like, we spend way too much time Sunday to Sunday. If you're giving to a community, like if you're playing, you're wasting time.
Yeah.
And you're wasting resources.
Right.
That's a lot to be in the church 30 years and to give and to go. And if this ain't real,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a waste of time.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like he says, just this idea of deep brokenness. And I feel like the church is not meeting that. Like the church is not meeting that. And why, I believe, is because honestly, there really is no honest preaching. There's no honest teaching. There's no depth to it. There's no life that's given, right? There's nobody standing up there that's just, we're all worried about how to teach the text and opposed to how the text breaks us and how the text talks to us and just being real. We're all here to hear what God says. And so, Sunday morning to me, again, that just misses it. And I think that's what a lot of people miss when it comes to church. He also said this. He said, the problems and the issues that he's going through is not solved by information or inspiration. Right? So you can tell me everything about God.
Yeah.
This is that apologetics thing, right? You can just tell me every argument. I've been through them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know them perfectly, but I've been through them all. But that's not soothing. That's what I meant when I said that my theology wasn't able to support my circumstances.
Yeah.
Is those things no longer weren't able to help, right? And then he says it's not solved by inspiration. So feeling good.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? It just doesn't do anything. The excitement of church just doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't do anything.
I can't remember what we were watching one day. And you had said that actually you were just like it reminds me of the church when the church is trying to pull emotions from you, or you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can speak to that, but I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, you were watching something and it reminded you, and you kind of compared it to the church and how it's just, feeding off of your emotions almost. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I don't know exactly what you're saying, but I think it's the truth, because I said it.
Yeah. You just caught me.
I know you was up there. Yeah, Lord. But I definitely get it. Like I just feel like, and this is, I don't know, sometimes I'm just going to say it. I just feel like, a lot of what we're doing today in church is trying to find God. Like I feel like we're going through the motions to get him to show up. That's how I feel. We're singing these songs, we're preaching these sermons because we want him to show up. He's
already there.
Lisa, glory.
Stop it. And that just came with a hot flash. So
yeah, I know. I
right
see
now.
You flashing, girl. You're flashing. But yeah, that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
He's already there, but again, we don't think that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the environment that we've set up is not to engage the Spirit of God or the people. And so when he says he's underwhelmed by Sunday and that Sunday morning in church just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
It's not bad in and of itself. It's not sinful. It's not, for some, it works.
Yeah.
But for others, it doesn't. And this is why this is so important, because this was so valuable for me.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard for people to get it. It's hard to have this conversation with people.
Yeah.
Because they assume that they assume the negative.
Yes.
They assume that, okay, you just don't want to be committed to a church, or they assume that, you're going through some deep thing. I mean, I've had people say, I've had people literally say to me, is there any unconfessed sin in your life? You see what I'm saying? Like, to the point where it's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm feeling this way because I'm not. So it's really hard to have these conversations. And
then I would think it would turn you around on the other end and make you feel like, what is wrong with me?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So to hear somebody say that, you're like, this is me. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm not, like, nothing's wrong with me. There's other people out there that feel this way.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just probably are saying the same thing. I couldn't voice it like that either.
Nope.
I couldn't interpret it like that either.
Absolutely. So. And it's so good to just hear somebody be able, like I said earlier, to articulate what you're feeling and to say it. And I think his story is valuable too, because he's come out of the church. He was pastoring for a very long time, didn't sin his way out of church.
Definitely.
So he didn't fall.
Right.
He chose to walk away. And he's pursuing something different. Like I said, I'm a Mark Comer fan. I haven't read his latest book, so I couldn't tell you if it's good or not. But this is where this is going, in terms of meeting people where they are. But anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. I know from some of the comments and stuff like that, there's a lot of you who are dealing with this struggle of wanting to connect with Jesus, but not finding a home in the church.
Yeah.
And to some degree, feeling like you're walking by yourself. Well, there are people who get it.
Yeah.
And people who understand it. It's not everybody's story, but it's somebody's story. And so, check out the whole interview, because for me, it just hit my heart, and it did my soul some good. Not everything there is something that I would agree with, and I'm sure there's things there that you wouldn't agree with, but to hear someone wrestling with, thinking through some of these things and not just dismissing them as wayward thoughts was refreshing and beautiful. And so, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another edition of the Church Dropout podcast. And let my wife get a little break here because she's flashing. I get it, sister.
Ooh, I need it.
Lord. Shabba.
Next step. You know what happens with the next step.
No, I don't. What's the next step? Oh, Lord. Yeah. I can't even say on camera with this girl. All right. Thank you again for tuning into the Church Dropout. Please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast at. And I got to end it real quick.
Good night.
Good night. Talk to you soon.